A choice for voters in Chula, Vista, raising the sales tax to fund public safety. We'll hear from both sides of the debate.
I would love to have had 2-month deployments. Go out for 2 months, back in for 2 or 3 months, back out for 2 months. That would have been great.
The Pentagon is exploring a new plan that could have Navy sailors spending more time at home and less time at sea. And solar panels could soon be a requirement for all newly constructed homes in the state. Stay with us. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. San Diego activists are speaking out today, a day after a video surfaced on Facebook that appears to show sheriff's deputies roughing up 2 restrained suspects. We showed you that video last night on Evening Edition, but permission for news outlets to broadcast it has since been revoked by the person who posted it. Civil rights leader Reverend Shane Harris spoke to reporters today and called for the sheriff's department to immediately release the body camera footage.
Why was the force used that was used after the arrest was made? Why the banging this man's head against the fence like he's a rag doll? Why the slamming the guy on the floor, his head against the pavement, the cement sidewalk? We want questioning around that. We want to know why.
In a statement today, the sheriff's department said the 2 deputies in the video have been placed on administrative assignment and that the department will conduct a comprehensive internal investigation. President Trump told reporters today that San Diego has asked him to start building its section of the border wall. It's unclear what the president was referring to when he said San Diego made this request. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero is looking into it.
A spokesman for the San Diego County Board of Supervisors says the county has not asked for any action on the wall. While the county did vote to support a federal lawsuit against state sanctuary laws last month, that didn't include a request for the wall. Here's what President Trump told reporters at the White House.
San Diego has asked us to go forward with their section of the wall in California.
A White House official said on background that the president might have been referring to some San Diego area residents. Earlier this year, Congress authorized funding to replace 14 miles of fencing along the county border. For KPBS News, I'm Jean Guerrero.
For a detailed look at the U.S.-Mexico border wall already in place, head to kpbs.org/America's Wall. There you'll find an interactive investigation we did in collaboration with iNews Source. It covers the existing barriers and its impact over time. The Pentagon is looking at sending ships on shorter, less predictable deployments. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says it's a break with Navy tradition that sailors may welcome.
Secretary of Defense James Mattis is hinting publicly that he wants to get away from long deployments. The USS Theodore Roosevelt just returned from 7 months at sea that included stops in the Middle East and Western Pacific. These long tours, mapped out years in advance, are the way the Navy has operated basically since World War II. Mattis wants shorter, less predictable tours. Sean Van Diver is a former Navy man with the Truman National Security Project. He says the idea could be a hit with sailors.
I would love to have had 2-month deployments. Go out for 2 months, back in for 2 or 3 months, back out for 2 months. That would have been great. That would have been more time with my family than I would have gotten otherwise, right? The 6 months is a long time. It's very hard. And 8 months is even harder.
What stands in the way? Carrier groups are basically floating cities. Their movements demand careful planning.
We need to be able to train and equip these ships, and if we don't know where the ship's going to be at any given time in their training life cycle or geographically, how will we know when to send sailors to school?
The Navy hasn't released a formal plan. Mattis has told lawmakers that he wants to make the U.S. Navy less predictable around the world. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
San Diego State University's athletic department is reaching out to the community to gauge what they want in a new football stadium. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has more.
The school sent 180,000 online surveys to alumni and others with ties to the university, hoping to understand what they want to see in a new stadium. Now, school officials hope to build the facility in Mission Valley if SDSU gets voter approval to buy 132 acres of land there. Athletic Director John David Wicker says the survey is part of the process that'll shape the final structure.
It definitely informs us as to what people think of what this initial concept is. It'll also help inform us on the type of budget that we can formulate to build a stadium, because it'll tell us how much revenue that we can generate off the stadium as it's currently designed.
Now, the survey asks about the importance of special events, semi-pro football, soccer, rugby, and concerts. Survey results will help inform the final stadium design. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
KPBS is a service of San Diego State University. Turning now to the primary election coming up on June 5th. One of the local measures on the ballot is out of Chula Vista. Voters will be asked whether they want to raise their sales tax by half a cent to help hire new police and fire personnel. KPBS reporter Claire Tragesser reports the city council says the money is badly needed, but opponents say there's no guarantee it will actually be spent on public safety.
We're not asking for the world. We're not asking for a Cadillac plan.
Mike Diaz is a former firefighter and current Chula Vista city councilman. He says there's a big problem in his city, a shortage of police, firefighters, and 911 dispatchers.
Year after year after year after year that we're not meeting response times. And when somebody dials 911, the expectation is that someone's going to show up and take care of a problem, and we're not doing that right now.
It took Chula Vista Police and Fire on average 6 minutes and 31 seconds to respond to emergency 911 calls in fiscal year 2016, according to a city report. In San Diego, the average was 7 minutes. That's 31 seconds above Chula Vista's goal of responding to all emergency calls within 6 minutes. Diaz says to meet that goal, both police and fire need more staff. Right now, Chula Vista's police department has the lowest ratio of police officers to residents in San Diego County, according to a study from Sandag.
They're at 0.8 police officers per 1,000. The regional average is 1.29 police officers per 1,000. All we want to do is tie second to last.
That's where Measure A comes in. It would raise $17 million a year with the goal of hiring 79 new police officers, dispatchers, firefighters, paramedics, and other public safety personnel.
It's a marketing tool. So now you've got this great big pot of money.
Russ Hall, the head of the opposition to Measure A, says there's a problem. Funding police and fire sounds good, but the sales tax actually goes into the city's general fund.
If something else comes up, then that money can be taken out and used for other purposes.
So Chula Vista is facing a conundrum common among California cities. By state law, if governments say a tax increase will go to a specific purpose, they need 2/3 voter approval. To avoid that, lawmakers can instead say the money will go to the general fund, but then opponents can argue there's no guarantee how the money will be spent. Hall says it should be no problem getting 66% of voters to approve public safety spending.
Police and fire is very popular. It's mom, apple pie, Chevrolet, police and fire. I mean, they're right up there all together.
Hall says he'd even vote for the measure if there were safeguards to ensure it went to public safety. But first, the city would have to show it was fiscally responsible.
Do everything you can before you go to the tax. And then, if you have to at that point, city comes back to the taxpayers, to the voters, and say, you know what, we have tried everything and we still have these costs that we can't contain. Then you can go back to the taxpayers in good conscience and say, you know what, we need a little help.
That happened recently. In 2016, Chula Vista voters approved Measure P, a half-cent sales tax to fund infrastructure. That money also goes to the general fund. Now at 8.25%, Chula Vista already has the third highest sales tax in the county, below National City and La Mesa. Councilman Mike Diaz says there are ways to ensure the money is spent properly. For example, an oversight committee.
And at the end of the day, every 4 years, the citizens will have the ability to say, you took care of our money and we're going to reward you maybe with another term, or we're going to boot you out of office for spending that money a different way.
But if Measure A passes, its sales tax increase will remain in effect until another ballot measure removes it. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
The District 6 City Council campaign trail is heating up in the final sprint to the June primary. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy says candidates seeking to replace incumbent Chris Cate are actively participating in forums and debates.
Frustrations over housing development and infrastructure are high among voters in District 6, which includes Mira Mesa, Kearney Mesa, Eastern Claremont, Rancho Penasquitos, and Sereno Valley. In Claremont, a recently approved sewage pipeline running from the Marina area to Miramar to boost San Diego's water independence is stirring concerns over potential leakage in residential neighborhoods. Nearly 150 people packed a recent forum at Claremont High School, where District 6 challengers Tommy Howe, Matt Valenti, and Jeremiah Blattler sounded off on the issue. Incumbent Chris Cate did not attend that event, but he did appear at a forum this week at Mira Mesa High School, along with Howe and Valenti.
And this is the night of our District 6 candidates debate.
The district's housing development boom was a major topic.
Traffic is already bad, and of course people are concerned about large projects going in of that scale.
Jeff Stevens is chairman of the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group and a resident of the area since 1980.
Our two biggest projects right now are the redevelopment of Carroll Canyon, which will build about 6,500 homes in Carroll Canyon. So we're dealing with that and all the issues that surround it.
Stevens says the biggest issue with the project is traffic. He wants the city's commitment to expand Carroll Canyon Road. Other forum attendees voiced concerns over maintaining park space and alleviating homelessness. Craig Jackson is worried about the growing number of homeless people living in the canyons.
Why is this a major problem here? Because the canyons are bone dry, and the canyons are almost all interconnected here, so that once a fire starts, one may assume it will be going into all canyons downwind.
The top two candidates will face off in the general election in November. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
Our media partner, iNewsSource, is following the money this election season. Here with the latest cash report on that District 6 race is iNewsSource reporter Jill Castellano.
6 candidates are vying for the city council seat in District 6, which includes Kearney Mesa and Mira Mesa. Incumbent Chris Cate has raised far more than his competitors since January, with $53,000. As of April 21st, his campaign has $175,000 in the bank, 11 times more than anyone else in the race. Cate, a Republican, is also getting support from a local political action committee that has raised more than $300,000 from the Lincoln Club and Chamber of Commerce. The runner-up in District 6 fundraising is former teacher Fiaz Nawabi, who has raised $19,000. He recently announced he dropped out of the race, but will still appear on the ballot. In third place is broadcaster Tommy Howe, who has raised $8,000. Both men are Democrats. The other 3 candidates reported raising less than $1,000. To learn more about the money in politics, go to data.inewssource.org. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource reporter Jill Castellano.
iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. Democrat Doug Applegate nearly scored a major upset in the race for the 49th District in 2016. He fell short by about 1,600 votes against Congressman Darrell Issa. For the next month's primary, the retired Marine colonel is back. He tells me Marines never quit. Mr. Applegate, thanks for joining us. The last time that we spoke was in 2016, right before you came very close to winning the 49th congressional seat. After that energy that you invested in that race, why was it important for you to run again?
Well, 1, because Marines don't quit, and 2, people in the 49th need representation that recognizes that we're in the middle of the longest war in our history. And we've gotten there without any authorization for the use of military force since right after 9/11, and it's unconstitutional. None of the congressional representatives on the Hill are doing anything about voting on that by roll call, and a lot of other things aren't getting done. Education, renewable energy, as well as health care.
And as a retired Marine colonel, what do you think about the job President Donald Trump is doing so far as the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces?
Well, he's unfit to command. I mean, my commercials have already been running. I said that in 2016 when I was asked to comment about Donald Trump. I never thought that he would be elected, but that's why we can't put a whole lot of trust in polls.
And a recent poll of likely voters in the 49th district finds that one of the biggest issues for these voters is the proposed border wall. If elected, under what conditions would you support funding this border wall project?
I cannot conceive of any condition that I would support the border wall. My first profession was a Marine infantry officer. Any Marine infantry officer knows that barriers can always be defeated, and they have to be observed by Marines. The concept of the border wall will never work. All we need to do is to look down at the demonstrations down in Tijuana and San Ysidro that show people sitting on top of those walls. What we need is a realistic approach to the southern border. We can accomplish that with drones and sensors. There's been huge advances in those areas, but I want to make a specific point. It's not because of people crossing the border. The net immigration from Mexico over the last 10 years has declined to a negative level, and that's been confirmed by the Pew Research Foundation. The drug cartels is a problem, but the wall is going to do nothing to prevent the drug cartels from getting their product across. But I want to make it real clear. I do not support the wall on the southern border.
And we've spoke about why you're running. Just to wrap up, can you tell the people out there what uniquely qualifies you to represent the 49th District as our final question?
Experience. Experience to understand the threats around the world and to know when they're being overblown or the military is being used improperly. We could get a much better evaluation of what we should do overseas if we called the right people up from the Pentagon. I know the right people in the Pentagon to ask to come up and testify, and they can always give you a much more realistic evaluation in terms of blood, treasure, and duration. And no one would have ever bought into invading Iraq in the first place. So it's experience, it's a perspective from the standpoint of I have been talking to working families for the past 3 years. A few candidates have awoken to this need, but I grew up in a blue-collar family. I come from a working family. You can't say that you know working families if you've always been an attorney or have been in real estate or have inherited vast sums of money. I'm the one that's been the most connected to the district. I've raised the most money within the district, and I think when we get to June 6th, I'm going to be one of two that will be heading into the general election.
Doug Applegate, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you, Ebony.
As we count down to the June primary, KPBS News will continue to reach out to candidates. You can see more of our election coverage at kpbs.org/election. A first in the nation, California Energy Commission approved new regulations today requiring new homes to have solar panels. The commission says adding the panels would cost more, but consumers would see reductions in energy costs.
This particular measure actually improves the cash flow position of the home buyer, because any incremental cost in the mortgage, if indeed the solar goes into the mortgage, is actually smaller than the savings on the energy bill due to the generation of the solar.
Opponents argue Californians can't afford to pay any more for housing. The new regulations are scheduled to take effect in 2020, but they need final approval by the state's Building Standards Commission. State law requires that by 2030, at least half of the state's electricity come from non-carbon producing sources. On the heels of some of the most destructive fires the state has ever seen, lawmakers are requesting new funds to help firefighters cope with the new normal. A bipartisan group of lawmakers is requesting $184 million from the state budget to increase resources for fire agencies. They joined firefighters from throughout the state at the state capitol this morning. Part of the funds would go towards updating technology used to track and dispatch engines and personnel.
What we realize is Uber and Pizza Hut, you can follow a blue dot on where they are when they come to your house. We don't even have those blue dots for fire engines today. Most individual agencies have them, but to bring those all together so that a master mutual aid system can look at those blue dots and where they are and where they could move to be best used is something we need to do.
In addition to improving dispatch technology, $100 million would also help pre-position fire resources and personnel in high-risk areas. $84 million would go towards purchasing more fire engines. Lawmakers say there are fewer CAL FIRE engines on the road today than there were in the mid-70s. More than 1,000 backpacks were on display at San Diego City College for a suicide awareness campaign today. Send Silence Packing encourages students who are thinking about suicide or know someone considering it to reach out and get help. The nonprofit Active Minds says the more than 1,000 backpacks represents the number of students who commit suicide each year. Some of the backpacks belong to actual students who took their lives. The campaign helps connect students with mental health resources.
The people that I've talked to, they don't have anybody in their life who's committed suicide. You know, they only hear about it, and to kind of see it and read these stories and to kind of put yourself in that position and kind of, it's really eye-opening for people. Hopefully the people come and look at this and you know, if they need help, this will kind of urge them to get help.
Send Silence Packing visits 30 to 40 college campuses each year.
I'm William Brangham. Tonight on the NewsHour, the nominee for CIA director faces questions over her involvement in controversial interrogation practices. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It's been a dry, hot week all around the county, but temperatures will drop slightly as we head into the weekend. Julia Whiten has the forecast.
It was a dry and hot day, especially for folks off to the east in the desert areas. We saw triple-digit temperatures. Not too bad at the coast, though. Temperatures a little bit more moderated thanks to the nearby ocean and the onshore flow. Morning clouds give way to sunshine, and all pretty nice day for folks closer to the water. On our big picture here, you can see that it's really quiet across a lot of California. As we head into the weekend, we will be watching an area of low pressure developing off to the north and dropping on southward. That will cool things off for those folks off in the deserts. Your temperatures are going to come back down to near what's average for this time of year. For tonight, we'll have cloud cover increasing yet again. Around daybreak, you'll have the cloudy skies around. Temperatures will be near 60 degrees. As we look around the area, you'll see temps dipping to the low 50s in Ramona, Mount Laguna down to 56 degrees. And again, dropping to the low 60s in San Diego. Tomorrow's temperatures will be back on into the low 70s for San Diego. We'll be in the triple digits in the deserts. You can see Borrego Springs up to 103. Another hot day. Again, it's when we get that cool air to come on down through the weekend that we'll actually see those numbers falling a little bit. But another hot day for our deserts. Otherwise, onshore flow persists for folks at the coast. Going to be a dry day. No precipitation expected. Let's look out at that extended forecast. As you can see, for Friday and Saturday at the coast, we will have clouds and a bit of mist even in the morning. Temperatures will be getting a little bit cooler, but the clouds will break for Sunday and bring back the sunshine. Friday and Saturday inland featuring plenty of cloud cover around, and much cooler temperatures will be in the 60s and 70s as we head on into the weekend. And finally, in the mountain region, lots of sunshine expected here, but look at how those temperatures cool. Saturday's high temp is only going to be in the upper 50s. For folks in the desert areas, we will be dropping from the triple digits on Thursday down to the 90s for Friday and 80s for the weekend.
A display of spectacular lights on the beaches of San Diego. It's called the Red Tide. This collaboration This coloration of water happens when massive numbers of organisms swim upwards to the surface on a sunny day. Their movement with the waves appears red by day but glows blue at night. Researchers at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography are trying to learn more about this phenomenon. The last red tide last happened in 2013 and lasted about a week. Now, here's a look at what we are working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, the good, bad, and the crazy. We'll share the sounds of this year's Eurovision Song Contest. And on Midday Edition, strong, determined, and powerful. That's the heart of a Mother's Day production in San Diego, tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/Evening Edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.